What's up and welcome back to another video. My name is Miles Away. Now today I'm going to show for you what might well be the most unique synthesizer ever created, the Motorsynth Mk2 from Gamechanger Audio. So what makes the Motorsynth so unique? Well, the Motorsynth is the world's first and only synthesizer that uses 8 brushless drone motors to create the sound. Now, I've always had a passion for flying drones and drone videography. In fact, most of the drone footage you see on this channel was filmed by me, and I've even sampled drones to use in my songs before. So for that reason, I've been really interested in the Motorsynth since it was released, and I wanted to say a big thank you to Gamechanger Audio for sending one over for me to review and check out on this channel. Now, traditional synthesizers use either analog or digital wave shapes to generate sound, and that's how it's always been. But the Motorsynth works extremely differently. The Motorsynth sound is generated by 8 brushless drone motors that each have an electromagnetic pickup placed near the motor's inner coils. The spinning motors create fluctuations in the magnetic field that are picked up and amplified by the pickups and used to produce the sound of the synth. The motors spin at different speeds based on the notes you input to produce different pitches. Then, each motor disc has 3 different tracks engraved into it that will create a different wave shape based on what you select. There's also a 4th wave shape that I've never seen before, the M wave shape, which picks up the exact electromagnetic response of the spinning motors themselves. The result is a sound unlike anything I've ever heard. Now, most of the demos online showcase the Motorsynth for being really dirty and grungy, which it absolutely can be, but I was also blown away by how beautiful it can sound. Now, there's a concept in Japanese culture called wabi-sabi that essentially translates to finding the beauty in imperfections within nature. And I think that the Motorsynth really emphasizes this concept because every single fluctuation in speed of the motor creates different little pitch imperfections. You can never fully get rid of the gliding between notes. There's always some noise from the pickups and the spinning motors, and it just produces a sound unlike anything I've ever heard. However, the industrial, heavy, dirty side is what this synth is more famous for, so let's check out a demo song I made where every single synth sound is created using only the Motorsynth. All right, now hopefully you enjoyed that demo song. I definitely do not feel that these motors are gimmicky in any way because the character of that demo song is just so raw and untamed, and I think I would have to work really hard to produce something similar with traditional synthesizers. Anyways, let's jump onto the front panel of the Motorsynth and learn how it works, and more importantly, hear how it sounds. All right, so here we are on the front panel of the Motorsynth. Now right off the bat, let's turn it on and listen to the sound. So there's going to be a lot of noise throughout this video. Now that is just the nature of this synth and something you have to live with. I personally think it's really cool because the discs play in key with what notes you're playing, obviously, because that's what's generating the pitches. So let's start off by blending in a motor sine wave. Now right off the bat, that character is incredible. You can hear it's just noisy and imperfect. Same with the saw wave, which is my personal favorite wave shape. That character is simply beautiful. Let's go through the other two. Square. And then finally, that unique M wave shape we talked about. Beautiful. Now something you'll notice is that whenever I play notes, there's an ever so slight glide, and that is something that is just inherent to the character of the synth because the motors are actually changing speeds and they can't do that instantaneously, but it adds a ton to the character. We can actually emphasize the glide if we want by using the accelerate and brake functions. So that's accelerate, it's choosing how long it takes to accelerate up to the correct pitch. And then similarly, if we use brake, it's going to release with a brake. The motor's not going to stop instantaneously. Let's blend in motor voice too. So we already get this beautiful detune and chorusing sound. But I'm going to show you one of my favorite tricks, which is right now we're hearing everything in mono, but if we switch this mode here to split, we now have a beautiful stereo spread of one motor voice on the left and one on the right. That sound is simply marvelous. Now I'm just going to enable a little bit of delay here from the Walrus Mk2, and we'll play around with this for a second. Let's turn it down a little bit here. Beautiful sounding, right? Let's disable the delay for now, but that stereo spread sound is just one of my absolute favorites. Now I've been playing with these performance controls, which are actually really fun, but you can use a MIDI keyboard as well, which I've got off screen. And we are going to use that for most of the demo because I love playing with the keyboard, but one of my favorite things was surprisingly just how usable this performance interface is. So what we can do, we can latch notes, go down an octave, go up an octave, and then we use these knobs to tune the sound. Let's enable our delay again, change these to saw waves. Let's have one of them be a square, and do a drone. This is one of the most beautiful drone synths I've ever heard by far. You can tune them to the same pitch and listen to the imperfections of the different motor voices beating off of each other. Or you can create complex chords. Absolutely gorgeous. So that's definitely my favorite way to use the performance tools, but I was extremely impressed by just how fun it is to play in melodies as you heard in my demo song earlier. So next up, let's bring in the digital voice. Now the digital voice is really usable and unique. So if I just solo it for a second here, we can go ahead and change different wave shapes. I'm gonna turn off our delay for now from pulse, saw, triangle, sine, and noise. We can also choose how we route it, whether we go straight to the master or go through one of the motor voices or both. So it's really versatile. And the way I like to use the DCO is to brighten up the sound, because as you've heard already, the motor voices are inherently really dark and grungy, and the DCO provides a really nice clean contrast. It's also got some really cool features such as wave folding and pulse width modulation. I'm going to turn off the DCO for now. And something worth mentioning is the paraphonic nature of the Motorsynth. So what paraphonic means in this case is that each of the different 8 motors gets its own VCA and amp envelope. So you can play individual held notes, which make it really playable. Where it's paraphonic is that each one of the parts, motor voice 1, motor voice 2, or DCO, just get one filter. So if I do some filter envelope shaping here, you can tell it's not giving a unique filter envelope and filter to each voice. But unlike other paraphonic synths like the Moog Matriarch, where this really is a bit of a limitation, I really don't find this to be much of a limitation at all, because you get your own independent VCA, which makes it very playable. And because the voices sound so unique, you almost don't need to really use the filter envelope and the filters all that much beyond just kind of shaping the sound how you like. One of my favorite sounds to do is simply just to band pass the synth here. We have different filter types, which we'll look at. Put in a little bit of drive. That's maybe too much. There you go. Put on a bit of delay and use it like an electric piano. Let's bump those up an octave. I'm going to turn down the drive a little bit here. It's a really fun combo, kind of combining these really rich harmonic motor voices with the drive, which can go absolutely mental. Right, so we're going to just leave it really minimal here. All right, so I'm going to reset to an initialized patch, and let's go through the different filter types. Like, that sounds incredible to me. And it has different modes. Bandpass, which is surprisingly very useful on the synth because of how bassy the motor voices are. The high pass, similarly useful for the same reasons, and a really cool all pass filter. And all of these filters have this incredible drive. Now, this is how you get a lot of the best sounding sound design from this synth, is with interesting stereo distortion and stereo basses. Because remember, we get a stereo left, stereo right, and then 2 separate filters, which we can then unlink if we want by clicking here, unlink. And now, for example, if we wanted to have a all pass on one side, and then a high pass on the other side, and then change the octaves, absolutely mental, absolutely massive. We also get our own filter for the DCO voice too, right? Let's go ahead and switch to that one and turn up the drive. You can just get absolutely mental really quickly. So another really cool feature here that I want to highlight is the different voice modes. So if we go ahead and click Alt and go to Keys and Poly, we can go through and change our scales, and then we can get to our voice modes. So if I change all of these to unison, before we were hearing it on poly mode where we can play up to 4 notes, now we're in unison mode. And watch your ears, we're basically going to have a giant bass sound where everything is playing all at once. So you can just get some absolutely wild bass designs really quickly here. And this is a perfect place to show my two favorite knobs on the synth. I wish every synth had this, which is drift and detune on the front panel and cross modulation on the front panel. So we'll start with drift and detune. So if I play another one of our distorted bass sounds and then bring in drift, listen to that absolutely massive sound. Basically, this is creating per motor drift in real time with the electromagnetic motors that is going to create these amazing imperfections in our sound. Detune is a little bit similar, but not quite as dynamic. It's just going to detune each of the motors. And that is just absolutely massive sounding. Next, we bring in cross modulation, which is so powerful. It's gonna modulate motor voice 1 and 2 by each other based on which direction you turn. This is gonna be more apparent if we actually turn down the distortion. Let's actually relink our filters here. So we'll go ahead and link, and then we'll turn down the distortion, turn it to a basic low pass, and turn it off. So now we can hear the cross mod really well, which is a great way to bring in these complex harmonics. Bring it up an octave. You can see how pretty quickly I created that insane heavy song for the intro, right? Like this thing just wants to go nuts. I'm gonna reset to initialize one more time to show off one more polyphonic patch to show you a bit more of the beautiful side again and go through the envelopes, which I actually really like and think they're super versatile and powerful. So if we take away our DCO, or let's at least make it a pretty mild sound here, we'll go and make it a triangle wave because I really wanna highlight the, there you go, happy with that. I want to highlight the motor voices, of course, and then we'll go ahead and make one of these a square, one of these a saw wave, and make the square an octave up. Let's make it a sine, actually. So we've got a really basic pluck sound to start with. So if we go ahead and go to amp envelope, and then we're going to link the amp envelope. So we're going to link them to the master, which is kind of how a traditional synth would behave. And now we have the ability to sculpt our sound like this. So we can have a really nice slow faded pad. Add in some of that lovely drift. And we get a beautiful C6 sound. Let's bring in our delay. Just gorgeous, right? But what's really cool is that we can go through and change the different types of envelopes. So we can use an AD envelope, which is great for percussive sounds. This is from Modular. Or AR. I really like that one for bells and piano sounds. Some more complex shapes like a DASR with a DADSR, sorry, with a delay. And then a really cool one, which is the looping AD envelope. Really, really powerful here. So if we go ahead and change that. So beautiful, right? And what's even cooler, because remember we get an envelope per voice, is we could, for example, go ahead and unlink these. And then we can go ahead and change our amp envelope on our second voice. So we'll change that to V2 amp envelope, make it an AD AR. And so now we have a bell. Let's go ahead and change our DCO as well too. So we'll change our DCO setting to an AR as well. Bear with me, this is going somewhere, I promise. And we are going to go ahead and play our patch now. So we should have a looping amp envelope on one side. If I turn that up, Sounds absolutely beautiful, right? Like we can get some really complex sounds. Let's do one more cool thing with the DCO just to kind of show off how deep you can get here. And we'll hard sync the DCO and we'll put it up an octave. And then we're going to use our DCO detune here, which we can, each of these knobs have different functions, right? So if we hold Alt, we can detune our DCO. Beautiful. So this is a great place to look at the mod section. And again, I'm just going to be scratching the surface here because Gamechanger have great video manuals on all these features. But we essentially have 3 modulators that can be routed to pretty much anything on the screen. So if we go into our mod setup, let's check out mod B here. So it's going to be clocked to the BPM. I like that, nice and slow. We can change our subdivisions. We can change if it's phase reset. I'm going to leave it off for now. And it's already going where I want it to go, which is the cutoff. But let's say, for example, if I didn't want it to go to the cutoff, I could assign it using this section here, the mod assign. So we'll turn up the mod depth A, and we should hear it affect our low pass filter. Beautiful. Let's add in some cross mod. Like, come on, that is so cool. Just a little bit of delay, we've made such a unique track. I'm gonna reset the patch one final time just to go through a couple of my final favorite features. Again, this is not a full comparison, a full feature dive through, but just some of my favorite things. So there's a great sounding arpeggiator. And within the arpeggiator, there's actually a motion recorder, which we can then use to play and record whatever we want. What's cool is that even if we stop the arpeggiator, this will still work because I misspoke earlier. It's a motion recorder that just records whatever you want, and then when you play the keys later on, it's gonna show up and basically be playing back the motion you recorded. There's also a great sounding sequencer that I really like that is quite a lot more versatile than one would think, right? So if we go ahead, we can turn sequence to on, change some of the notes. Turn it back on again. And it's working with that motion recorded stuff we did there too. The final feature I absolutely love is the random generator, which can be used not only for the whole synth itself, but for the arpeggiator, the sequencer, everything. Really, really cool sounding, right? Some of these sounds are great starting points. Then, for example, if we like that, from there, we could go ahead and create a sound out of it. Amazing. Well, that's not a comprehensive tour of the synth by any means, but it's where I'm going to wrap it up for today. All right, so hopefully that tour of the synth gives you an idea of just how fun it is and how unique it is to work with. Now, of course, I didn't go through every single feature. There's already a great video manual from Gamechanger Audio online, but I wanted to showcase what makes it so special. So how about some pros and cons? Well, this synth is definitely not for everyone. It's expensive, it's a boutique instrument, and it's very non-traditional, but if you like the way it sounds and you like the workflow, there's really nothing else like this on the market, and it's incredibly well designed, well thought out, and well built. I was also very pleasantly surprised with how deep the Motorsynth is and just how versatile it can be despite its quirks and limitations. Between the different stereo modes, the different filter modes, all the different cross modulation and mod matrix options, the different multi-timbrality modes, which I used in my demo but we didn't look at in the tour, the synth can really go a lot deeper than I think a lot of people give it credit for, and it could really very well be your main workhorse if you take the time to learn this instrument. I also found myself really loving the playability of the performance interface with the different buttons and the knobs. Not only is it great for drone stuff, which we looked at, but it's actually quite playable for traditional parts as well. And it was a really fun way to compose the demo track, the heavy one, and I was really impressed overall by just how fun it was to use without any external gear added. However, because it has so much character, grunge, and quirks, the Motorsynth is going to be a lot less versatile for traditional music, pop, electronic, than something in a similar price range like a traditional synth like a Prophet or a Novation Summit. For example, as we've been hearing, the motor voices are inherently super dark, so if you want to brighten them up, you're going to either have to add filter drive and get a distorted sound, or mix in the digital VCO. Finally, the fact that the motors always are going to have to glide between pitches means that it's not going to be the best if you want a really fast synth that's going to do really quick arpeggios and fast parts with no glide whatsoever, because the nature of physics, the motors have to stop and change speed, and while they're extremely fast, there's always a little bit of a noticeable glide which you're going to hear. Same goes for the actual noise of the motors. Of course, you're not going to hear it when you record, but if you're someone who likes to produce really quietly with monitors, the noise might throw you off. For me, it doesn't bother me and I got used to it quickly, but definitely make sure you think about that. But I think that wraps up all the pros and cons I have for today. Now, before we jump to the final outro jam where I use the Motorsynth in a more classic electronic melodic synthwave jam, I wanted to say thank you so much to Gamechanger Audio for sending over the Motorsynth. Thank you to you for watching. If you do want to get your own Motorsynth, please use the link in my description. It costs nothing extra and it helps me continue to fund the channel. And if you want to grab some synth patches for some other synths you own, check out my store. I have synth patches for lots of different keyboards, and I'm actually going to be working on a custom patch bank for the Motorsynth as well. All right, thank you so much for watching again, and I will see you in the next video.